That's what we love to hear. Scott Ian is here. It's good to have you back again, man. How's the
Right? I get,
last
get
year been?
great. Didn't we just talk recently?
We spoke like it was like it feels recently, but it was like last May now.
Was it?
So yeah, man, this shit whizzes by.
Wow. Hold on. I'm just posting that I'm on live with you right now.
Ah, thank you so much, Scott. I really appreciate it, mate.
Swipe up for the link. All right.
Thanks so much, man.
Okay. Posted.
Thank you very much,
Hey.
Scott. Really appreciate it. Scott Ian of Anthrax, The Damn Things, and all other manner of brilliant stuff. Scott, it's been like 9 months since we spoke last, and you now have this Thunder Force project under your belt. So, when it comes to writing with someone that you've never written before, because we spoke to Phil earlier on.
Right.
How is that situation when you're put into a position where it's someone? We all know how you interact with bandmates you've either been in a band with for years or been mates with for years. But when it's a new project like this, what are the challenges when it comes to this?
Um. I don't know. I didn't really see or feel any challenges. The scoring part of it was pretty cut and dry. Phil wrote the whole score, and he made it really easy for us, for Dave and I, to come in and be able to play these parts in the studio. It was like learning 33 really short songs or something.
Yeah,
Um, but then, writing the end credits theme, that was something that kind of came along during the project. He said, "What do you think about trying to write a song? Like a theme song?" And I was like, "That sounds like it could be fun." And he said, "I can't promise that they're going to use it, you know, but we can try. We could write one and submit it in to Melissa and Ben and Netflix and see if they're into it." And I said, "Well, yeah, I'm in." And for me, it's never a challenge. It's all about the opportunity and being able to work with someone else that, you know, when would I ever get to work, with Phil Eisler? And now I am working with him. And so, yeah, and it came together super fast. He sent me a riff, and then I kind of had an answer riff, to continue his part. And then we got together in his studio. And I mean, uh, you know, Phil could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the whole musical arrangement came together in under an hour. I
he
mean,
said it was super quick. Yeah.
yeah, we really worked well together. And I think I really got the vibe that he was going for, because he sent me this killer riff and I was like, yeah, that's awesome. So, uh, yeah, it came together great. And of course, then the missing pieces, lyrics and melody ideas and who's going to sing on it. And I said, well, I could text Corey and see if he'd be into it. I know he's always really busy, but you
There is
know,
that.
but why not? It can't hurt. Again, can't hurt to try. And so I wrote him. I told him what we were doing and what was going on, and he was super into it. So we sent him over the rough that we worked on, and man, he same thing. He just kind of nailed it right off the bat. Sent us back the ideas, and we were like, yeah, dude, zero notes, like, for him. Just we had nothing to say. He nailed it. And yeah, it was the whole thing just came together so easy, and it was really fun to do.
Does it help when you're writing a theme song for something like this? When you're mad into comics, Corey's the same. Like, does it help having that background when you're writing something specifically for superheroes? Does that kind of thing, does it come into play as the
I
inspiration when you're writing?
I have to assume so, because I don't know any different.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, I feel like, it's not often that I'm ever writing for something specific. You know what I mean? Like, here's here's the subject matter, write something about this, um, in a song context. Maybe for other things I write, but when it comes to writing lyrics or trying to write music, it's generally for a band, and you don't have existing subject matter that, like it's for a movie or, um, so, it's only happened a couple of times in my life when I've been a part of something like that. But, I would say, yeah, the fact that we're all nerds, and we're all into this, and I would have been totally into watching this movie anyway. And if I would have heard metal in the score in some of these scenes, and then like a song at the end, I would have been like, why didn't they call me?
Yeah.
But they did. So, I think it definitely helps that, Corey and I are certainly into a lot of the same stuff. And that's why he's for something like this, there's no one else I would even think about to go to. It's like, well, he's going to love this. So, yeah, I think you definitely hit the nail on the head.
I spoke to Dave and Phil both about this, but like, I think it's a big fucking moment for all of us that like heavy music as well. That a big Netflix release like this is being soundtracked by our world, and it's such a thing that's at the fore of this movie. The fact that we're having this conversation, the fact that tomorrow fucking hundreds of millions of fuckers all around the world with a Netflix account are going to get riffs in their face when they watch a Melissa McCarthy record. Does it feel like a victory for us? Because it does feel like a victory for us where I sit.
Yeah, sorry, my dog is barking. I don't know why.
What's your dog's name, Scott?
Come here. The dog's name is Grizzly.
Yes! Hello, Grizzly.
She's very vicious.
Sensational. This interview has peaked. This is it. This is the highlight right here.
Yeah, I think it is. It is a. Hold on, give me one. second.
No problem at all.
What's up? What? You got a rebel. Yeah.
I love it. Grizzly's madhouse, or so we say. I feel like I need to get Ferris and sit him here, and we can have some sort of online virtual play date.
Hey, sorry.
No worries, my dog does it as well. I'm saying I should bring my dog Ferris up and we can have some sort of virtual play date.
So what you were saying, yeah, yeah, it is a big deal. It's really exciting. It's like, yeah, millions and millions of people are gonna see this on Netflix. They're gonna stream it, and it's really cool to know that we got to be a part of this. And Phil had this idea, and because of Melissa McCarthy's character in the movie, who's an old school metalhead, and he just had this great idea. Well, why not have these really heavy, brutal cues for some of the scenes in the movie that need that? I mean, you could certainly reach, you could get there with an orchestra. Obviously, an orchestra could be extremely heavy. But I think he just felt like, well, when some of these fight scenes and scenes where things are getting smashed and whatever, why not add in, some guitar and drums, and that's where the idea for Dave and I came in, because he had already, I think, worked with Dave, or that, they had a common friend or something. But yeah, and then he said, do you think Scott would want to do it? And I remember when Dave hit me up, this is months and months ago, saying, hey, do you mind if I pass on your contact? Here's what's going on. I was like, yeah, sure. Sounds like fun. And yeah, I'm super excited, to know that, over this weekend coming up. Yeah. I mean, the potential is massive. Like, how many millions of people are going to get to see this? And I'm excited, to see my name in the movie credits. And I mean, that shit never happens. So...
Have you done anything like this before, Scott? Have you ever done anything in terms of playing on a soundtrack or anything before? Because I couldn't.
Yeah.
I was racking my brain. Nothing was coming to mind. What am I missing?
Yeah, back in Anthrax did about 20-ish minutes of score for the John Carpenter movie Ghosts of Mars.
Oh, right. I didn't realize that. Yeah, okay.
back in the 90s. We spent a week with John in the studio in Los Angeles.
Fucking hell.
Yeah, it's still, if it wasn't for the fact we had pictures of us together in the studio, I would think I dreamed the whole thing. Well, of course, and I have the soundtrack with our music on it. But yeah, just total fantasy back then that actually happened. And yeah, we were in the studio, and that was an even different scenario because it wasn't like this score where Phil wrote the score, and then he had Dave and I come in and play on it because he had written things specifically for guys like us to play on for these scenes. But with the Carpenter thing, he hadn't written anything for these scenes. He just said, I'd love to get a metal band to play some of these things. And someone who was working with him at the time, I think, knew our manager and said, I know Anthrax's manager, they'd probably be into this, knowing that we were big Carpenter fans. And he's like, you think they would be into it? And yeah, they definitely would. And the next day I went down to Cherokee Studios in LA and had a meeting. And I mean, we already said yes. And I had to in our mind, it was like, of course we're doing this. And I'm sitting there and he's like pitching me this idea. Like, I'm like, you can tell me you want us to fart, whatever you want us to do. We'll do it. You're John Carpenter, by the way. Like, as I, sit here with this dude right next to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so we were actually writing that stuff. We were writing that in the studio. He would give us a little bit of direction, about tempo, or like where he would want things to build and then climax and then maybe dynamically bring things down again and ramp it back up. But as far as the riffs and stuff, we were coming up with all that stuff kind of on the spot while we were in the studio watching the scenes that he wanted us to score to. And I specifically remember there was one where Pam Grier, the actress, she's in it, and she gets her head cut off. She gets decapitated in this scene. And I remember him saying, he goes, I need a big crescendo when Pam loses her head. And I'm like, what a great job I have.
My God, like some days are truly better than others. That's insane.
I'm sitting here in the studio with John Carpenter, and he's telling us he needs a crescendo when Pam Grier gets decapitated. I was like, damn, I knew I picked the right profession.
And like I like a whole bunch of film composers. I love Danny Elfman, I like Hans Zimmer. I like a bunch of those people.
Sure.
But John Carpenter's the one where I'm like, I'd go to a John Carpenter show when he does those Halloween things and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Like,
he's an amazing writer. Not just writer, but music writer. He's an amazing composer. Yeah.
For real. Did you feel... Was it bizarre to share a musical kinship with John Carpenter? And what was it when you were putting that together? Where was the sweet spot of this is what he wants from us? Was there something?
He wanted metal. He wanted these scenes to be really driving and aggressive and and just hard, edgy, hard. He wanted guitars. He wanted a band, so it's kind of cool in that movie because it's, it's like John Carpenter type score, and then it'll cut to something where there's something crazy going on, and all of a sudden we kick in, and it just the dynamic totally changes. And I think I have to assume he was very happy with what we were doing. He invited me to the final mix of the movie like months later on the big stage in the Sony lot in Culver City. And he said, you really should come down. You'll never hear a movie sound this good, and it's basically they have a big movie theater on the Sony lot. And he's in there, and there's 5 giant mixing desks that go across the floor of the movie. One of them's for sound effects, one is for dialogue, it was just insane. And they just kind of sit there and piece it all together. Let me get a little bit more of that gunshot, or let's have a little bit more of this, and I just sat there for like 7 hours and watched them do their thing. And it was just, I was like, I would do this all the time if I could.
So speaking of things you would do all the time if you could, I've got to talk to you about this Among the Living comic project. Sure. Like, fucking as fate would have it, the first graphic novel that got me into this shit is I bought Brian Azzarello's Joker one shot. And in my opinion, Grant Morrison is the fucking oracle, full stop.
Yeah.
Getting Grant Morrison involved, like he's a bizarre cat and that's what I like about him. I like how he thinks. I like how out of the box he is. How is a conversation with one of the planet's most eccentric humans?
Um, we've known each other for a few years. I I can't remember for sure the first time we met. He's friends with my best friend Andy, who lives in Glasgow, and they've known each other forever since the early days, like through Forbidden Planet in Glasgow, and he was friends with the owner. Yeah, whatever. But
Yeah.
um, we've known each other for a long time. I think the first time we really got to hang out was um, when I was doing my talking tour in the UK. So it's a few years back at this point. I don't know, 6, 7 years ago. And he came to my show in Glasgow, which was nerve wracking for me, knowing that Grant was, and I could see him. I could see his head.
Fuck that.
I could see his
Yeah.
head in the audience. And that was the night I was filming too. I was shooting it for, for a DVD. I'm, I'm such a fan
Yeah.
of his writing and his mind. And so knowing that he was sitting in the audience really just, it initially made it, it was very nerve wracking. I got over it quickly, but we kind of hung out that night and had some drinks. And yeah, he's really obviously, not obviously, but he's very easy to talk to. I mean, he's one of the smartest people I've ever met on this planet for sure. But yeah, we just have a lot in common when it comes to comics and music. And I mean, he's an old school punk rocker, and there's a lot, just have a lot of common ground over our lives. We're right around the same age, and yeah, we've just seen and done a lot of similar things through our lives. And but yeah, his brain works on different levels. I don't know what the percentage is. They say as humans, we only use X a percentage
Yeah.
of our Grant would know what that percentage is, of course.
Yeah.
What most humans level is at, he's easily 20 to 30% above where most people are at. Wasn't there a movie about that where you popped the pill and suddenly you're able to use like 90% of your brain power? And
Terrifying as a concept.
yeah, so I feel like Grant has just always he sees things, he sees through them, and he sees around them, and he sees things in a different dimensionally than I think most humans do. And that's what makes him such a great writer.
And when you take something that is as dear to you as Among the Living, right? Like it's a significant part of the Scott Ian story. When you're putting something that is that dear to you in the hands of someone that brilliant, like how has that process been? Because obviously you're close to Among the Living, you know how this shit works as well because of the runs on Lobo and various things that you've done in this world. But where how is collaborating with, I'll use Grant as the example, but like how is
Sure.
it with like the how close I am to my own art versus letting the artist be the artist? How is that whole collaboration? How does that come to pass?
Well, we've been we've always wanted to do a comic. I mean, obviously the band has been associated with that since the beginning, even before we did I Am the Law. Um, the t-shirts we were wearing, in interviews we were doing in the early days, we would always talk about comic books and things we were into. And I mean, if you've been a longtime fan, or even if you're a new fan, you probably know. So um, we've always wanted to do something. We just never had any idea. And then we would get offers to do things, and they'd be really, really cheesy, just terrible ideas. And I'm never going to do something like that unless it's going to represent us the way I would want it to represent us, as a comic book, as a graphic novel. It's a world that I take very seriously, and I wouldn't want some stupid Anthrax comic coming out.
Yeah,
And
man.
so it's something we've just passed on for a long time. So then when Josh at Z2, who we've been friends for a long time, we've worked together many times when he was working in other capacities for different companies. And he came to us with the idea of take a record and get get writers to write stories about each song. And I said, I really like that idea, but the only way it works is if we get the writers we want, because I only want to do it if basically we kind of get our wish list, because otherwise why do it? And
Yeah.
that's no knock on
No.
anybody.
But when
I
you
don't I first thing I said when the idea came in, I was like, I'm not writing this. I'm not gonna write us. Are you nuts? That I
yeah.
don't have time to. When am I ever gonna be able to? Like, no, not you. Other writers will, And I said, okay, but I'm gonna put together a list. And Josh was like, cool. Let's do it. Let's go for it. Of course, the first name on the list was Grant Morrison, figuring, all right, at least I know the guy. I could personally reach out.
What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah, he could say, I fully expected, hey, I'm sorry, I can't, I actually do this for a living. I'm writing books for DC currently, and what else? And I don't know that I could squeeze in your Anthrax thing, but um yeah, we put together a list that had Grant on it, and Brian Azzarello, and Rick Remender, and Rob Zombie, and those are people. And then because my editor Ian Sattler, who I wanted to bring in, the guy who I worked with on Lobo, um, I wanted to bring him in to be the editor on this, and he's really close with Gerard Way and Mikey Way, so he's like, hey, I could ask those guys, and I'm like, that would be amazing, like Gerard's, he's he's way deeper in that world than
Fucking
I could.
Eisner Award winner.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. And
Yeah.
by the way, his book is on Netflix as a series
Yeah, for real, yeah.
going into its second season already. So
Yeah.
I mean, he's already king shit of Fuck Mountain when it comes to
yeah.
when it comes to
Even more so than you just said, Scott. It's season 3. The motherfucker's on fire.
Season 3. So
Yeah.
there you go. I mean, nobody in music, I don't think, maybe I'm missing someone, but nobody from a band has ever gotten bigger in the world of comics than Gerard.
Yeah.
So, hey, what an amazing thing to have him involved. And I said, we talked, and they said, well, what if we had some band guys too? And I said, well, yeah, that there's some obvious dudes like Rob and Corey. They were on my list, and right out of the box, and it just everyone we asked was into it, and everybody said yes. So it was like our wish list of writers. Everyone was into it, and then we started all the artists that we wanted to work with, and then getting to pair the writers with the artists, and like showing Corey, like, what do you think of this dude, and what do you think of this dude, and just it was the whole process has been amazing. And then it came down to, did I want to write one? And there was two songs left, and I said, I'll do I Am the Law. Nobody wanted to do I Am the Law because of the dread
pressure
thing. And they said, well, I said I would only do it if I could write a dread story, because otherwise, what do you really do with that? I guess someone, I mean, Grant Morrison, I'm sure, could have come up with something, but I said, if we could get dread, that would be amazing. Like, and I've had offers to write dread stories before when IDW, a buddy of mine, was running things over there for a while, and he had asked me to do a dread story for them once, and I came up with the idea, and then I just never had time to do it. And so I did have this idea kicking around that actually, in a conversation with Grant a few years back, he helped me fix my ending a few years ago. So we pitched it. We pitched it to Rebellion in the UK, who own the rights for Dread, and they liked my story idea. They had like a couple of notes for me, and I thought that all their notes were killer. And so then all of a sudden, I've got the daunting task now I actually have to write my Dread story. I can't just talk about it forever. But I loved it. The experience was amazing, and Frankie got to, I think, for the first time, exercise his chops on a story, and he wrote a very,
I didn't know that,
a tale of sheer brutality for, I believe, wait, did he do one world? I start getting confused on who did what, other than I for sure Grant did Indians.
Did you give them the idea of a story, or was it just like, here's the song, go?
No, as people were being asked, they would basically, you know, look, Grant was the first person like kind of reached out to. So it's like, it's open season, any song you want, go for it. But then other people started replying and saying, could I do this? Could I do this? And, you know, you can't wait around. So we'd say yes. So then when Indians was still available, and so then Grant actually wrote me back at some point saying, hey, I'm sorry, I hadn't gotten back to you on this. And I said, well, this, and this is still like, these songs are all still available. And then he wrote me back and he said, oh, I would love to do Indians. So there you go.
And
Which it's an amazing, because none of the stories that people are writing, none of them are just, it's not like they just took my lyrics and wrote a story. It's what they've taken from these songs,
right.
how it inspired them. So it has nothing to, a lot of them have nothing to do with them, like lyrically what I wrote. And it's just man, it's Brian Posehn wrote a story. I know I'm missing people, which I'm
Yeah.
sorry whoever I left out in this moment, but yeah, just it's mind blowing to me how, you know, how it went from this idea to and I actual a reality better than I could have dreamed it.
I love the fact that these are that, like, so many of these names that we've just spoken about are people that
I
are
mean, we've
like,
got, sorry, as they're pop, Derek Robertson, the
yeah,
guy who co-created The Boys, of like amongst many other things.
yeah,
But the co-creator of The Boys is drawing Gerard and Mikey Way's story. Like
come on.
we've got Gerard Way and Derek Robertson working to. I mean, it's like it's just insane.
This
This
is
thing we were able
wild.
to put together.
That is wild. So many of those people are names that I would associate with you, right? Like you and Grant Morrison being friendly is something that I'd expect, and obviously Rob and Brian Posehn and all these people that you will have known through the years for ages. What's fascinating is Gerard and Mikey Way, right? How much, what would you say about their creativity now that you've worked with each other in this capacity?
All right. I mean, look, it's kind of obvious. They they started one of the most successful bands of the last couple of decades, and
The
then
last truly massive rock band, I think.
yeah, and then, you know, and then Gerard goes off and starts working on comics, and you know, which seemingly is his true passion, and
Loves it, man.
you know, and got to the top of the heap, you know, like as big as you could ever possibly be. You know, yeah, it's mind blowing, and I have nothing but love and respect. And the fact, you know, we've known that Mikey was a Anthrax fan for years. We'd always see pictures of him wearing an Anthrax shirt on stage,
Yeah.
and you know, we've reached out to each other over the years and said hi and whatnot. We've never really got to hang, but yeah, I'm couldn't be more thrilled that they're a part of this. That
It's
actually came in. I mean, it probably would have happened, but Ian, who's the editor on the book, Ian Sattler, is also very friendly with Gerard and Mikey. So that was because I didn't have their contacts, but he's like, yeah, I'll hit them up immediately. And then he wrote back like the next day. He's like, they're in. So
come on.
yeah.
So does this build any more passion for Anthrax in a different way? Right? And Anthrax has been your baby for this amount of time. But getting to do something at this stage in your career, something like you say, it was never just going to be, we're going to shit out a comic. It's not doing a comic to do a comic. It's doing a comic
Right.
in the way that we want to do it.
Right.
Does that bring anything else out of your relationship with Anthrax to be bringing something even new to the band, even at this point, this far down the line?
I just think it kind of goes along with, you know, our career. It's you know, we've just, it's cliche, but we've never been afraid to just look outside of the box of, you know, we never put ourselves in the box of just being a metal band. And there's nothing wrong with that either. You know, there's plenty of bands that I love that all they've ever done is just be a metal band, and they're amazing, and they write great songs, and they still have huge careers, and all they've ever had to do is just go out there and be a metal band. you don't know shit about anybody, and they just make records and they tour. Iron Maiden, case in point, for me,
Yeah.
would be one of the best examples of that. It's like, who's better at just being a metal band than Iron Maiden? You know what I mean? And
Yeah, totally.
they're the biggest and best.
The
Um,
logo, the art, the fucking
Everything,
just the look at them, the sound, everything.
the
Yeah.
live show, everything
Yeah.
about it is the best it will ever be, and maybe because they put all their focus on just doing that. Where, it's been different for us since the beginning. We've never, it's not like we're ADD. It's not like we need to constantly find things to stay. I'm perfectly happy sitting on my ass doing nothing when I can. But um it's always just been a case of, we're just creatively adventurous, and we've just always wanted to see what else is out there. What can we do?
Yeah.
I love being a metal band, and I love being a metal band that could do whatever we want. We're not
Absolutely.
gonna go off and make a jazz record, because we can't. We just visit. I can't play that music.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of things I can do outside of just being in a metal band. So, Anthrax has been an amazing door opener for us as artists, as
Yeah.
musicians, as people. And because of the way the world has changed, the internet has opened so many doors for you to be able to express yourself in different ways. And this is just one of those outlets. I've been into comics my whole life. When I started reading, I read comic books. So, and the same goes for Charlie, same goes for Frankie. Um, it's just something that we've loved way well before I was into music. So it only makes sense that, this is something that eventually would happen in our career.
Do you relate to hip hop in 2021? Because when I think of Anthrax, like stepping outside of the box, like I mean, I'm still influenced by your fashion from that point in time, But there's when I think of Anthrax outside of just metal, there's that. But the first thing that comes to mind is the hip hop connection and the Def Jam thing and the getting across the ideal to other metalheads that this is aggressive and this is aggressive. It makes sense.
Right.
Do you relate to hip hop in 2021?
Before I answer that, I have to, because something just crossed my mind when it comes to Maiden. You can't just say Bruce Dickinson has just been a guy who just was a metal band the whole time. I mean, he's a Renaissance man, whether it's writing books or fencing or
Flying
becoming
a fucking plane.
a fucking pilot. Bruce.
Yeah.
I should have separated that out in the moment, but I forgot for a second, that because I start talking about Maiden, I get very excited, because for me, they're the greatest. They're the best metal band of all time for me. I forgot for a second that Bruce has done more in a week than I've probably done in 15 years. So I have to give that up.
Of course.
But when it comes to rap, no, I don't listen to any new rap music, nor have I in a long time. I mean, I hear things, obviously. I don't live in that much of a bubble, and I hear things, and I have friends that do stay current and listen to new things, and sometimes they'll they'll be brave enough to say, you should check this out, I think you might like it. And and then in that situation, I'm not grandpa metal, then I'm grandpa hip hop.
Gotcha.
Grandpa hip hop will be like, oh, 80s rap is way better than this. But for me, it was a long time ago. It was actually in like the early to mid 90s where I just got lost when it came to new stuff. I don't know what it was that changed in the sound. Maybe not. Maybe I changed. I don't know. But there was something missing for me as a fan compared to everything I had been listening to up into the mid 90s. Most new stuff that was coming out didn't move me. The types of rap that were becoming huge, whether it was the West Coast kind of vibe, or then the really thuggish stuff, or then even, I don't know. I mean, there's some Biggie songs that I thought were great, and I thought his skill as as a rapper was amazing and stuff, but you know, it was few and far between.
Got ya.
Like it's very similar to how it is. Well, yeah, I would have to say I definitely like a lot more metal, let's say over the last 20 years
Mm.
than I do rap.
Mm.
That's for sure. I feel like there's been a lot of great metal bands, certainly since 1990, you know, for me personally, than there
Yeah.
has been. But you know, it kind of makes sense. I loved rap music, but I wasn't a hardcore like that's all. I liked all kinds of music, and metal and hard rock was always the bigger percentage of what I was listening to in any year going,
Mm.
even when I was say when Nation of Millions came out, Public Enemy's record, and which I still is one of my top 10 records of all time. I was still listening to more metal at that point in time than
Yeah.
I was rap music.
And so I wanted to ask, when you talk about like metal of the last 20 years, and I'll kind of shorten it to metal in recent years. Like when it comes to like you're on record already saying no touring, no record. When touring comes back, then we'll think and talk Anthrax record.
Sure,
But
sure.
when it comes to putting out new Anthrax record and writing new Anthrax material, like, is it about? Do you pay any service to what's going on in metal at the moment, or like what is the challenge of putting out an Anthrax record in the modern era? Because you had like worship music, right? But it sounded fucking. It didn't. It sounded like Anthrax without sounding pastiche and like a Xerox of a Xerox, right?
Sure. Sure.
Like,
Thank you.
so,
Thank you.
so where does the, like, do you keep your head on the swivel for what's going on in metal right now? Like, where does that come into play, or
Well,
does it
I mean, yeah,
for this stuff?
I hear a lot of new stuff, but I really don't know how that would serve us as, when it comes to writing new Anthrax material, because, you know, it would be kind of obvious if like our next record came out and it just sounded like a Code Orange record.
Yeah,
I love that band. I love
yeah,
Code Orange, but and maybe in some way, shape, or form, something is going to go through my filter, and I have an idea that ends up on a record that if I pointed it out to you and I could say, yeah, I was that riff, I was influenced by something Code Orange did, um, but I don't know that anyone would listen to it and say, oh, well, it sounds like a Code Orange record, and
mm,
that's how every band works. I can't tell you the conversations, how many conversations I've had, and many of them because I have a show on Sirius, and I get to talk to my heroes, and I talk to Gene and Paul from Kiss, and I talk to Rick Nielsen, and I talk to all these
yeah,
guys, and they'll just tell me song by song who they took the riff from,
yeah,
like all these like bands from the late 60s and early 70s that I've heard of, and then I go back and I listen to the records. I'm like, oh my god, yeah, they just stole everything. And but I can't say that every band just they don't bands don't just steal riffs. You listen to things and you're influenced by things, and it runs through your brain and your soul and your hands and everything else that goes into making music, and it comes out, hopefully it comes out as you, it comes out as Anthrax, it comes out as whatever band you're in. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like if
absolutely.
because if look, if you really dig down deep, you could say, well, every rock or metal guitar riff of the last 50 years was basically already done by Tony Iommi. He played all the riffs. Everything we've been doing since is just it's just a different take on something
Yeah,
he's already done. That's a little bit faster. That's a little bit slower. It's in a different key. But Tony did all of it on the first 6 Sabbath albums. So um
no
but
arguments. Yeah,
yeah, but so you know, you take everything. When we first started out, we fucking loved Motorhead and Iron Maiden and 100 other bands, and all of that comes into what you're doing as a musician, and hopefully comes out in your songwriting, and you're not just a clone of something that came before you. And we were lucky enough, when we started putting out records in 84, our records sounded like something different. They sounded original. People were like, this is a new thing. We're going to call this thrash metal. Cool. Great. Awesome. We're just happy that people didn't just say, oh, they fucking Motorhead clone.
Yeah.
It's like, why should I listen to them? I'll just put Motorhead on. Like, nobody said that about us,
Yeah.
which great. Not that we were Motorhead clones, but you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
you just strive to do something that's yours, that's your own, that you have your own sound. I think the biggest compliment you could pay any musician, any songwriter, any artist in any type of form is that you're doing something original.
Yeah.
It's
Great.
fresh, it's new. I mentioned Code Orange because they're a band that just in the last few years, we had them out on the Killthrax tour.
Yes.
And,
yeah. I went to that with Killswitch. Yeah.
and man, I hadn't heard of them before. I had seen their name, but I hadn't heard the music.
Yeah.
And the first night of that tour, I went and I stood on the side and I watched, and the energy of that band, watching them on stage and their energy, I made me so fucking excited. I couldn't control myself. Like I wasn't even just the fucking energy with the sheer force of what they were doing. They refused to take no for an answer. They're like, fuck you. You're going to like us. And that's
24/7, 365, those guys.
That's what we've been doing for 40 fucking years. It's just like, fuck you. You're going to like us. And put us on any stage, like the Raging Bull line. Give me a stage where I can rage. I was fucking blown away by that band. And then, so of course now I buy the records and I'm a full-fledged supporter of that band. And because I felt like, hey, these guys and lady are saying something. They're saying something new. It's got hardcore and it's got metal and it's got things you've heard before. And they're not fucking reinventing the wheel, but they're doing it in a way that you cannot fucking deny how great it is.
Yeah, agreed, man. Agreed. I was lucky enough to have the Star Child on this show 2 weeks ago, and I was so chuffed, Scott. I asked him a question that he hadn't been asked before, and I said to him, like, we know this farewell tour is coming, and I've got friends who've done farewell runs before, and they say that it's emotionally draining in various different ways. But what we do know when it comes to Kiss is you've written your last Kiss song, as far as we know. What does that feel like to have written your last Kiss song? Is done, right? That chapter's done. What does that feel like? When you finish an Anthrax record, which I'm not saying you have, but if you have finished an Anthrax record in this time off, does mortality come into your thought when you finish an Anthrax record these days? When it comes to new material, I'm not putting a shelf life on Anthrax because I've lost Slayer and I ain't looking to lose any more of you anytime soon. But when you finish a record, does mortality play a part on the brain at that point in time when it comes to the band?
Well, I'll start with, we have not finished the record.
Right.
So I don't have to think about that yet.
Good. But were this, yeah.
It is a good question. I wish I would have thought of that when I talked to Paul.
It's okay, Ray. You wrote Madhouse, and I can ask some questions.
My answer to that question would be, I've kind of done at some point in my career. I always looked at Angus as kind of my touchstone, because I felt like if Angus is still on stage banging his head, well, then I have that many more years to go. Because I think Angus is, I don't know how many years older is Angus than me, 6 years older than me, I think, right. Something like that. So I look at it this way. So then the day he decides he's not doing it anymore, I have at least that many more years.
Yeah.
That I have to do it. Well, let alone maybe go past that. But to me, that's always been the minimum. I know this is some crazy.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how I've always looked at it. As like, if he's up there doing it at, still with that energy, I've got no excuse.
I'm glad it's Angus and Brian that you're taking your cues from, and not Gene and Paul, because otherwise I'd be like, "Fucking hell, we've only got this amount of time." Have you caught Kiss on the farewell run yet?
I have not yet. No. I'm sure I will, though, at some point. I hear the rumors just like everybody else that they're going to end in New York.
Yep.
Some big deal, whatever. I think that's the show I would need to go to as a New Yorker. And, having seen them for the first time in 77 at the Garden and all that. And, that's the one I would want to go to.
Do you enjoy being on the other side of the mic now that you've got a show on Sirius? Because like the thing is, I would never in a billion years expect you to remember this, but you were stood with my wife and I at the Classic Rock Awards, and we were chatting, and you were like, "I'm so sorry, I listened to the first half of what you just said, but Ronnie Wood just walked past." Right.
I do remember that.
But
Yeah.
it's to me, being a fan is something that sometimes leaves people as they get older, as they get more cynical. But I always held that moment quite dear, because I was like, fucking Scott Ian is just exactly like us when it comes to this shit. And when they give you a mic to do things like this, I love this. I thank my lucky stars for my life every day. Do you enjoy being on the other side of the mic? And
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done it if it's not something I enjoyed. When they pitched it to me a couple of years ago, I said, yeah, I love it. As long as I never wanted it to turn into a thing where it's just like I just interview everybody. I'm very picky with. I mean, it's ironically called Never Meet Your Heroes, because everyone I have on is someone who I have huge respect and love for whatever it is they do, whether it's music or authors or actor, whatever it is, pop culture, just someone that I really want to just talk to for an hour. And yeah, I've done, I don't know, about 40 of them, I guess, over the last couple of years. And I love it. I love it because, it's a lot of people I already know.
Yeah.
Some people I know them better than others. Some people are actually just my friends. So of course that makes it way easier. Like, Corey Taylor and I could do a 100-part series with him.
Yeah.
We just the two of us talking shit for 24 hours and then cut it up into a whole bunch of episodes. But yeah, I really do enjoy it. I totally get nervous still. I can't tell you how nervous I was to talk to Paul. I've known Paul since 1987, and not as well as I know Gene. I've hung out with Gene a lot over the years, and a different relationship. I haven't hung out with Paul nearly as much over time. It's hi, how are you? He's always very polite and nice, and
Yeah.
those guys have gone above and beyond for Anthrax over the years. And but I was so nervous knowing that like in 4 days I'm talking to Paul and getting my thoughts together, and yeah, I told him, I was like, I don't know why and it wasn't even in person. It was on Zoom because we couldn't be, I usually do it in person at Sirius's studio. Obviously we can't these days, but I told him, I said, I was so nervous to come on and do this with. He's like, why? We've known each. I said, I don't know. I just like, I think it's just with Kiss, it just goes back to, I turn into a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
It really goes back to that. And I just have such respect for you as an artist and what you've done, what you've done with your band. It's mind blowing. And, we got into that too, just how to do it. And he's a guy from Queens, New York, just like me. We grew up in the same area,
and more than just hard rock and metal, comics and fucking
I mean,
the whole
it's just
9
so
yards.
much. And it's, and if it's not for what you did, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you, like it's a huge fucking mind fuck for me when I talk to dudes that have everything to do with why I even wanted to be in a band, because without them, it never would have happened. And that's what I love about being on the other side of the mic. And you brought up the Classic Rock Awards, man. some of those in London. Was that at the was that the one at that hotel? The was
Yeah.
it the
Yeah, I think it begins with I. My wife would know
was
far
it the
better than I would.
was it the Langham or the I don't
It
remember.
might have been,
But
but
man, when you're I, I got to go to a bunch of those over the years, and man, you're sitting in a room. And I've got pictures, of course, with everybody because everybody's in a good mood.
yeah,
But I mean, you're sitting in a room and like, oh, right there at that table, it's Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck. They're just hanging
wild.
out, and like, oh wait, here's Steven Tyler. Wait, he's saying hi to me, like, and no, oh, let me just. I've got this picture of Tony, me, and Geezer, the three of us, and the look on my face. I've posted it many times over the
Yeah.
years. I'm just like, it's just fucking, and I,
Stunned.
and I know those guys forever, but
Yeah.
still
It never leaves you, man.
you're literally standing in a room of fucking giants, like
Yeah.
legends, like just aliens. It's just fucking
Yeah.
mind-blowing. The people that show up, yes, dudes from the Stones, like, I mean, the levels of it just goes up and up and up. I get to hang out one time. Pearl and I were hanging out like in Ross Halfin's room that he had set up where he was shooting
Yeah.
everybody and we were just hanging in there for a while, and it's like, oh, it's Chrissy Hind. Let's like Pearl just like hanging out talking to her, and it's hard to not just start crying.
It's
It's just,
crazy.
it's so fucking heavy.
And like I shook Ronnie's hand, and he had barely got out of the door by the time I was calling my dad to go. I just fucking shook hands with a Rolling Stone. Like every now and then
Right,
there's one.
right.
And Scott, you say Paul is one of the reasons you do what you do. Thank you for being one of the reasons that is why I do what I do. It is always a pleasure to have you here. The comic's on the way. Thunder Force is on Netflix now. Go
Tomorrow.
and check it out.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the same worldwide, but I know here in the US tomorrow for sure.
Yes.
April 9th, Thunder Force.
Get involved with that.
Stream the shit out of it.
Yes, support it in the name of heavy music. Scott, I'm sure we'll speak again when you've got something next coming out. Best of luck with the comic, and always a pleasure to hang out, mate.
Cheers, Beez. Thank you.
Thank you, mate.
Right on, brother.
The one and only Scott Ian of Anthrax and